Hello and welcome. I'm Mary Jo Matusik, the President of the Rails Board, and I call this meeting to order on Friday, January 22nd at 1:01 p.m. at the Burr Ridge Service Center. Emily, will you please call roll?
Sarah Armstrong. Dave Berry.
Here.
Karen Bertschi.
Present.
Judy Crocker. Kate Hall.
Here.
Ann Hilliard.
Here.
Lisa Kanashak.
Here.
Mary Jo Matusik.
Here.
Paul Mills.
Here.
Kathy Parker. Carrie Pearson.
Here.
Sid Ruckriegel.
That must be Kendall.
Laura Turner.
Here.
Dane Ward.
Here.
Lori Wilcox.
Here.
Is Quincy hooked up?
Yes.
Are they?
They're muted, but they're connected.
So we think you're muted, Quincy. Judy, if you're in there, in the room.
We can see you, we think.
Okay. As long as you can hear us, I guess.
Can you
But
hear us?
You should find a way to unmute yourself.
Because for
Yes.
Voting.
For own.
Yeah.
But okay.
All right.
Technical difficulties.
All right. Let's start with the guests in Burr Ridge.
Ryan Hebel, Rails.
Mark Hatch, Rails.
Barb Brooks, Rails. Maria Meacham, Wilmington Public Library District.
Jenny Miller, Shorewood Troy Public Library.
Samantha Masaccio, Rails. Emily Feister, Rails.
Jane Plass, Rails.
Jim Krieger, Rails.
Rose Chenoweth, Rails, Talking Books.
Mary Witt, Rails.
Ann Slaughter, Rails.
Veronda Ditchford, Rails.
And Dee Brennan, Rails.
Okay. Bolingbrook.
Good afternoon, Joe Philippek, Rails.
And Louise Savela, Rails.
Cold Valley.
Carolyn Coulter, Rails.
East Peoria.
Kendall Orison, Rails.
Erica Washling, Rails. Amanda Gray, Rails.
Okay. No one in Rockford, is that correct?
Looks right.
Anyone else in Vernon?
Nope, just me.
Okay. Anyone in Quincy Public? And Illinois State Library.
Hi, Mary Jo. It's Ann Craig and
Lauren Tucker.
Bonnie Mathias. Karen Egan.
Sharon Ruda.
That's it for the State Library.
Okay, thank you. All right, we need a motion to adopt the agenda.
Second.
So moved by Kathy Parker and seconded by Dave. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. All right. Moving down to the Rails Board minutes of November 20th, 2015. May I have a motion for approval of minutes of November 20th Rails Board meeting?
So move.
I'll second.
Moved by Kate Hall, seconded by Kathy Parker. All in favor say aye.
There is an error.
Any corrections?
Yes.
Okay. Any corrections?
Yes, I noticed that Sid was listed as both present and absent.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, I believe I actually saw him at Coal Valley, so yeah. So
In November?
No, I don't know.
No.
Peoria.
That was East Peoria.
oh, okay.
I don't think he was there.
Okay, he was somewhere. I do remember seeing him. So Emily, will you please correct that? All right. In that case, all those in favor of approving the minutes with the correction, please say aye.
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 Opposed? Any abstentions? Motion carried. Okay. All right. It appears to be.
I'll make a motion to approve the November 20th, 2015 closed session meeting minutes.
Thank you.
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Motion carried. All right. 6-2, Rails financial report. Yeah. Jim, come join us.
Good afternoon. Our financial report is for both November and December, since we didn't have a December meeting, but my commentary will concentrate on where we were through the first 6 months of the year at the end of December. And I'll just highlight a few things. Our unassigned general fund balance coverage at the end of December was just over 16.2 months of operations. And our revenues and expenditures through the year, our revenues, of course, were well down, about $4 million. Our expenditures were virtually even with the prior year. And even if you take away the expenditures that are reimbursed, it would be slightly below. So our operations were very stable and didn't grow as we curtailed a number of activities that we had planned for this year, including salary increases and some new things on cataloging and hiring some people. Now, since I wrote the report, there's been a few updates. The legislature freed up the Live and Learn funds, which were almost around 50% of the state library's budget, and this amount has been allocated to us, and we are to receive nearly $5.8 million of area per capita grant funds, hopefully relatively soon. So yeah, I've gone through and looked at our remaining 6 months and did a forecast of that, and combining that with these funds that we should receive at the end of the year, if all goes well and according to projections, we would have between 18 and 19 months of coverage of operations still on hand, despite about 40% lower area per capita grant revenues for this year. So we are still in a very strong position, and that 18 months doesn't even include the unassigned fund balance or the assigned fund balance of $6.4 million, which would provide another 8 months coverage and some money in the capital expenditures fund. So we are basically still in a very strong position. Also in the forecast, what it looked like was our general fund and capital expenditures fund, which was broken out from the general fund combined, would lose just over $2 million, have a fund deficit of just over $2 million this year, and that's about 2.5 months of expenditures. So it's a relatively, you don't like being $2 million in the hole, but we're more than able to absorb it with the reserves that we've built up over the past 4 years. I answer any questions? One more item. Wanted to mention the email went out today on some Limerick board actions, of which I am a board member of, and Jenny is here, and she's ecstatic, I think, of overwhelming. But essentially, one of the agenda items was to contract and approve getting a contract with an accounting firm to handle all the accounting and financial operations. We selected Lauterbach and Amen, which is very well regarded accounting firm and concentrates in government entities, and was a very good fit to do this outsourcing. But in the course of the conversation, when we talked about a human resources or outreach type person that Limerick intended to hire, they brought up that they could do that too, and offer benefits with it, and they would be their employee. And so our ears very much perked up at that, and as a result of that, we have decided to basically outsource the entire operation of Limerick to Lauterbach and Amen, which should assure much more continuity. If they have somebody leaving, they've got somebody to replace it and fill in the gaps, unlike what we had with Limerick. And so I think Limerick's on that's a very positive thing to do, and we should be on very good footing. And yes?
I would just like to point out that although we're outsourcing it to Lauterbach and Amen, we're still at the interview table. We're still selecting the person. They are able to provide benefits that Limerick cannot provide due to our organizational structure, like health insurance, which is kind of unfortunate for a health insurance. But we will still have the decision-making power. We can still ask that the person be removed from the account. They'll be solely assigned to Limerick. They won't be doing other business as well. So we think it's a good fit.
And the other major action I think we took was to decide not to impose the extra billing to build up reserves. Our reserves are about $1.5 million, which would cover if we were to hit our full limit of the stop loss, that would be $1.1 million. So we have enough to cover that. So we're taking a wait-and-see attitude and see how it works out on the self-insurance, whether we continue to build reserves or not. So that action has at least been deferred for now, and we'll be watching that closely. So, very good news, I think.
Jim,
Yes.
I have a question about the first point, just for clarification in my mind. Based on your projections, when you say we would have 18 to 19 months of operating revenue for capital available, that's 18 or 19 months from the start of our new fiscal year, July 1st?
That would be where we are, and that's assuming that we receive the $5.8 million of APC funds. That would be our position as of June 30th.
Okay, thank you.
Which coincidentally is the goal of the board, to have 18 months of funds on it.
Does that include the amount that's set aside?
No.
So it's actually more.
That's another 8 months or so of coverage.
So we're still looking at 26 months around.
Because we have money that's set aside for capital improvement.
Exactly.
Yes, and the sale of all the buildings.
Well, and the designation for special projects.
Yes, the special project, yes.
And then we have $4 million in the capital projects fund.
Okay.
Just want to make sure my date's right. Thank you.
Yeah. So I would really like to commend the Limerick board because I think, that you've done great work in a short amount of time. Which is a lot better news than whenever that was a few months ago. And I also want to commend Jim for immediately getting on the board as this board asked us to do something like that.
Mm-hmm.
So thank you, Jim. It's great that you're there.
Okay. May I have a motion for the approval for the Rails financial report for November and December of 2015?
So moved.
So moved.
Okay. We have a motion by Dave and seconded by Nan. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Motion passed. All right. Jim, expenditures for November and December.
The expenditures are listed at the end of each financial report, and the expenditures for November were $640,233.56, and the expenses for December were $978,740.12. Before you get too excited about the big increase, in December it had one extra payroll, And we also had a major purchasing group purchasing expenditure included in that. And so it should go down again. Answer any questions?
Okay, may I have a motion for approval of the check voucher and register for November for $640,000, $223,640, comma, 23356 for November.
So moved.
Second.
And December in the amount of 978, comma, 740.12.
I'll move there too.
All right.
And I'll second there as well.
All right. It was moved by Paul and seconded by Kate. We need a roll call vote, please, Emily.
Dave Barry.
Yes.
Karen Bershey.
Yes.
Judy Crocker. Kate Hall.
Yes.
Nan Hilliard.
Yes.
Lisa Kanashak.
Yes.
Mary Jo Matusek.
Yes.
Paul Mills.
Yes.
Kathy Parker.
Yes.
Carrie Pearson.
Yes.
Laura Turner.
Yes.
Dane Ward.
Yes.
Lori Wilcox.
Yes.
Okay, motion passed.
It's like Judy was trying to speak. Can she just call in on the...
Yeah, they're
Oh.
working on it.
Okay, thank you. All right. Moving down to reports. We will discuss the the only report I have is that the executive committee did meet last Friday, and we will discuss that under 9.2. So, Paul?
Thank you, Madam President. The Consortia Committee met on Monday, January 18th, and actually the follow-up, the Consortia Committee Working Group, which is a subgroup of the Consortia Committee, met on Thursday. And something you'll see later on your agenda is a recommendation that was endorsed by the Consortia Committee for a revised LSAP definition. And I'm sure this board has heard the word LSAP many, many times, but for those of you who have forgotten, it's an acronym that alternatively means Local Library System Automation Plan or Local Library System Automation Program. Again, this involves our consortia, both the ones that have been official LSAPs and other consortia that are in our Rails service area. Jane will talk a little bit more about that when we get to that agenda item. No, please, someone have a question before I move on? Thought I heard it.
I did too.
It sounded like a nan.
Was it a Nan?
No.
No.
Oh, sorry.
We also had an overlap between the two meetings. We had a conversation about the overlay, the Interlibrary Loan Overlay Project. We talked about it at the committee, and the working group also had a really excellent conference call. And kudos to Jane for putting together a very diverse group from around the country of other appropriate bodies that have put together an ILL overlay project. It was very instructive to me to see, and I think the fellow members of our working group, to see that this project is something that has a dream that has been realized or is about to be realized in other areas, so that we're not simply chasing a vaporware concept, but actually looking at something that I think is real and actually providing valuable services to other constituencies. Other than that, we had a really good update on other things going on in the consortia land. The Illinois River Share Libraries continue their migration into Prairie Cat, which will happen later this spring. Link and Magic to consortia, formerly in the former DuPage Area Library System, continue their conversations with SWAN to see if they can find a common way to provide enhanced services to their combined patrons. I think that's probably a long enough report. Be happy to answer any questions that anyone may have.
Okay.
Thank you, ma'am.
No questions? Kate Hall, Consortia Futures.
Yeah, so the Consortia Futures Subcommittee is meeting on Monday, and we are going to be talking now that one of the big things that was being worked on the last year was the definition of LSAPs, which we're also, as Paul mentioned, discussing at the meeting today. So next we're going to be looking at our current charge and what deliverables we should be focusing on next in terms of providing, and talking about cataloging needs and different consortial approaches to cataloging and trying to come up with some best practices, and then also looking just at membership and service models as it relates to consortia, specifically looking at different libraries in general, but also making sure that we target school libraries, because that's always something that we feel gets left behind a little bit. So we'll be talking, mostly just starting the conversation of what does a successful model look like, what are things that we can do as a committee that we should be discussing to help put together some better service standards, and what is the right balance in different consortia. So more of the kind of big picture things that we hopefully then will narrow down and be able to have practical applications for some of our member libraries. So I will have more of a report after that meeting on Monday.
Okay. All right. Kate, moving on down to delivery.
Has not met since we last met and will be meeting again in March.
Okay, perfect. As I said, the exec committee did meet last Friday morning, and we'll be discussing that under 9.2. Moving to policy, Dave?
No report this
Can you hear me?
Yes. Yay!
Hi, Judy.
Good.
Hello. Thank you, Justin.
Thank you, Ryan. Thank you, Justin. Great.
All right. So we'll move down, since there's been no policy, we'll move to system membership standards. Kathy Parker, ND.
I know we've had, yesterday was the first meeting of one of the subcommittees, which I think was the fund.
Second.
Okay.
Yeah, but first in
I
a
haven't
long
been able to
time.
hit any of them, so I don't know where we're at with it because I haven't been able to go to any of them, but I'm sure Dee and Dee can update those because Emily's not going to.
Right, Veranda and I were both at the funding committee meeting yesterday, as was Dave, and he's a member, and it was a really good meeting, and I think we are pretty much agreed on a final draft for that subcommittee. So we're going to be putting that together, and we talked about. We're also having all of the other subcommittees are scheduled to meet within the next few weeks, and I think that we will be able to hopefully schedule another plenary session in March and look everything over, and then think about how to roll this out to the public. So we're getting there, Kathy.
I know.
We'll get there.
Maybe hopefully before I retire. I'm just saying.
She's just merciless. She's merciless.
I'm looking forward to that doodle poll when we can all.
Yeah.
That's intense.
So.
All right. Then we will move down to 7.3, Rails reports. Dee?
Sure. I did want to say first that we, as I think you probably remember, we had scheduled our April board meeting to have the primary location be East Peoria. And so I wanted to ask you all if you want to do kind of like we did in Coal Valley, which was we had a networking event in the morning before the meeting, and then have the meeting. It's a good way of encouraging members to get together as well as, interact with the board, attend the meeting, etc. So if you're agreeable to that, we'll start planning it.
Yeah, sounds wonderful.
That's great.
All right, great.
You said it was East Peoria in April?
Yep.
So we'd be doing like 10 a.m. for the
Probably
networking?
something like that.
Okay.
Maybe even 11. So.
Okay.
All right.
So you'll probably be hearing from Debbie and Emily directly about that. I don't really have anything else to highlight. I'd be happy to answer questions, any questions you have about my report. We have a lot of things to talk about later on in the agenda, so I won't belabor at this point. Questions?
Okay. Rail Service and Operations Report. Anything in there we need to know at this point?
I don't think there's anything that I need to highlight. Is there anything you want to highlight, Jane, at this point?
I don't think so, but be happy to answer questions.
We would, we do have on the agenda later on to discuss the board reports, which we didn't discuss last time because of we had bad weather, right?
Yeah.
So
Anticipating.
right, right.
It happened.
It did happen.
Yeah.
So there's that out there too.
Yeah. Okay.
Yes, Carrie.
Excuse me. Looking at the E-read figures, and it seems most libraries these days are seeing a lot of changes in circulation, a lot of areas down, e-books being the one that's up, and well, it's helpful to have the monthly chart. I think it'd also be helpful, not too much work, to have a column that shows any increase right in the chart from prior month and prior year period or year to date, something like that.
You bet.
So we can see how
Context.
Yeah, now that we have some of that data available.
Rhonda?
Just as a point of clarification, do you mean an increase in membership or all stats in general, just a change in all the stats?
Well, I was thinking more in terms of just what the kind of circulation is.
Just so that we're comparing apples to apples, perhaps a better comparison rather than the straight circulation would be a per capita circulation, because it's, I mean, the number of titles in the collection and the number of libraries in it have, I mean, that will have an impact. So it, you know, I mean, I know it's gone up and but also just so that we're, does that make sense?
So we understand.
Rhonda's like, I have no idea. I mean,
yeah.
Yeah, just. Okay. Emily understand. And you can call.
Yeah.
But does that make sense, Carrie?
Yeah,
Would that?
Yeah, I understand there's a lot of moving
right
factors to the database on which to draw on. So whatever I think they would think would be most helpful for the board to have in terms of trends and how things are changing. So.
Okay.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Okay, anything else? Questions about the service report? Okay, we will move down to Illinois State Library.
Hi, Mary Jo. Thanks. Can y'all hear me?
Yes.
Yep.
Okay. Just FYI, for those of us not in Burr Ridge, it seems that there's a microphone that has papers on it. I don't know if the other remote sites are picking that up too, but we could only hear bits and pieces of Carrie's comments, so FYI.
Okay, thanks for telling us. Sorry about that,
Sure.
you guys. Sorry.
No, we got the gist of it. Over the past 3 weeks, the state library staff has had a number of conversations with the library system directors and staff about the funding that has come to us via Public Act 99-491. This is the bill that was signed into law by the governor in December. And just in case you haven't heard about this, quickly, the law provides some funding for the Secretary of State Libraries grant programs. It also provided $10 million in operational funds for the office writ large, but that is not for state library grant programs. What was in Public Act 99-491 was funding for grants other than GRF funding. So if you think about our grant programs, most of them have sort of a potpourri of funding sources. They'll mix GRF, Live and Learn, Educate and Automate. They'll mix those funding sources in order to establish a funding level that the Secretary has requested for that program. What the legislature did with this law is they stripped out all of the GRF funding from our grant programs. So some of the grant programs that had lots of GRF funding really got cut tremendously. The grant programs that had no GRF funding, and there are a couple of them, were funded at 100%. Very quickly and very broadly, just going down the list, library systems, that's a 56% or 44% reduction, but 56% of the funding that was requested by our office is present in 99491. Public library per capita, 56% of the funding requested is in 491. Equalization, likewise, 56%. Blind and physically handicapped grants, only 29% of the funding requested was in the law. The veterans' homes, it's a very small grant program that we run. 100% of the funding was in the law. Literacy grants, 36% of the funding requested. So that's a 64% reduction there. Public library construction was funded at 100%. Again, because its funding source is all Live and Learn money, a special fund. School library per capita was funded at 84% of the request. Overall, if you put all these together, we were funded at about 55% of what we requested. So what this means is we look to our legislative staff across the street, we look to the folks in the Secretary's office, and we ask them, will there be more funding for fiscal 16? The answer is no one knows. There is no indication, no talk right now of any additional funding. There's no talk of not having additional funding, but there's just, the issues are pretty high level that are being discussed at this point. We likewise have no information about fiscal 17 and what our budget will look like in July 1. So we are taking the money that we got, and we're very, very grateful. We're very grateful for the money we received. We're taking the money that we received, and we're getting that out the door just as fast as we possibly can. That means that, like for the public library per capita grants, our calculations, our initial estimated approximate calculations indicate that will be paid at about 77 cents per capita. Now, last year, you may remember, it was at $1.25, so it's a significant reduction. The school library per capita grants last year were paid, I think, at about 75 cents. They're going out the door at about 66 cents. The public library construction program, for example, you've seen those applications coming through on our e-news. Well, those were funded all the way, 100%. So you will see public library construction awards coming through in fiscal 16. The library system, if we take the federal money that we have left, we had about $4.2 million left in federal money. If we take that money and we add it to the state funds that we received in this bill, We can fund the library systems at about 56%. We can fund for this year at least, the Talking Book Centers at 100%, and equalization at 100%. Public library per capita, we can do a little bit better than 56%. We can go to 62%, but again, that's using every drop of federal money that we have. So we don't know if we'll get additional funds. We are proceeding with issuing to Rails system area and per capita grant estimated at approximately somewhere around $5,781,000. Heartland about $1,976,000. So, you know what y'all got last year. It's a big reduction. When we talked to Dee and Leslie and the Chicago Public Library about these cuts, we talked about the fact that because this is such a dramatic decrease, we were asking that they resubmit their plans of service for fiscal 16, and yes, it is late in the day, but this is a weird year. It's a really weird year. Resubmit their plans of service by March 31st. And yes, we know that's right on the heels of the fiscal 17 plan of service that you're going to have to submit. We know that, but we do hope, have fingers crossed, that we will know something about fiscal 17 by the time you've got to submit the March 31st fiscal 16 plan. So I'm going to stop right there. I know that was just a ton of information to throw at you. Questions, comments, thoughts?
Go ahead, Carrie.
And I have a few questions. One, just to clarify on the public library, did you say 62% or 68%?
62. 62.
Okay,
uh-huh.
Okay. Regarding the Talking Books program, I'm a little puzzled from the January 12 letter. And one is just a question about because it speaks in terms of transitioning it over to the Illinois State Library Regional Library and the relationship between the Illinois State Library and the Regional Library, and how because it either presumes there'll be funding for the program if it goes there that isn't otherwise available, and just what the relationship of the regional one is to the state. How is there funding if it goes to the regional system if there isn't money at the state to pay for it in fiscal 2017? And if it does go to the regional system, would the level of service be the same as what's provided now?
Okay. Wow, that was a lot of questions, Carrie. Let's
Want me
see.
to break them down? Because it was a lot.
Yes, absolutely.
Okay, well,
go ahead.
Well, part of it says that there will be no more funding from the Illinois State Library in fiscal year 2017, thus the statement about transitioning to the Illinois State Library Regional Library. So what exactly is that, and how does that fit in with the Illinois State Library?
Here at the Illinois State Library, the National Library Service at the Library of Congress has authorized a regional library for the blind here in Springfield at the State Library. In turn, our office works with the sub-regionals, and there are 3 in the state, Chicago, Rails, and Heartland, for services that are specialized. The sub-regional at Heartland is the machine lending agency. In Chicago, they are circulation and outreach for the city of Chicago. And then Rails is outreach, readers advisor service for the whole state, essentially. Do I have that right, Sharon?
That's correct.
So we play a partnership role with the National Library Service to authorize these sub-regionals. The funding situation is such that we are pretty sure at this point that what we have right now is it may be all we get. So, well, we're issuing those grants in anticipation that there might not be any more funding for library grants than there is right now in fiscal 17. So, and again, that could all change tomorrow, Carrie. We're just working with what we know and working with what we have right now. It is the case that the 3 sub-regionals could work with us to use their own money after the start of the new fiscal year. It's not necessary that all systems stop. We're just looking at the reality that we may not have any money to support these grants in the new fiscal year.
Okay, well, trying to evaluate those options between the systems paying for some of it or it all just being transitioned to the regional library, I guess prompts 2 questions, and that is, if it does go to the regional library, how would the level of service compare to what exists now and what the systems, if they contributed together, might be able to provide? And again, 2, where would the regional library system get its money to fund the program?
Great questions. We do have a little bit of a better situation here in that we have a library in the state library. We have reference librarians. We have people who work as interlibrary loan and circulation. So we do have a library in the state library. It's not just an administrative grants office. So our initial discussion has been that we would look at, and this would all depend on what the systems tell us they're going to do, but we would look at some internal moving around of staff. We would work with the Secretary's office to perhaps have some new staff or transfer staff from other departments within the Secretary's organization. It really is too soon to say, Carrie, since we don't know exactly what the systems are going to do. But we do have a library with staff who we could reallocate somewhat, share somewhat with the Talking Book program.
Well, I guess for the systems to best determine if and how it should help, kind of ties to what the change in level of service would be if it all just goes to regional versus the systems maintaining it.
I completely agree. Our challenge right now is we don't know what's going to happen with our budget, with the budget for 17. We just don't know. I know that our office, of course, just like everyone sitting around the table there, our office would be very interested in ensuring that there is no service interruption or little service interruption for the patrons of the Talking Book and Braille service. But, you know, it's hard to have this kind of cut in your budget and not have some effect.
Okay. Thank you.
And I would just like to say, for the school libraries, thank you. Because when we put our grants in the fall, we didn't know what we were going to get, if anything. So thank you for funding them. It's not as much as any of us hoped for, including you, I know. But thank you for making sure they got funded and we got some money.
Well, Mary Jo, we had nothing to do with it. Thank your legislators, thank the secretary, thank the secretary and your legislators and you know, whoever signed on to this bill. So we're
I'm sure that's already been started, but we wanted to thank you too. Any other questions for Ann or comments? And do you guys have more? Ann?
Well, I guess we could go on and on and on. I mean, there's just tons of information here. I know the board is going to have a robust, I anticipate that the board will have a robust discussion.
Yes.
So maybe we can kind of hang back and be a resource for questions. I'm confident that Dee understands the situation. She understands the communication that's gone between our office and yours. So how about if we are a resource to you going forward in this meeting?
Absolutely. Thank you, Ann. Sounds good.
Can I just ask a point of clarification, just so when I go back to my meetings that I have, and just to clarify, cutting the system monies down to what, 5.8 million approximately for Rails, and then we have no clue about a dollar at all for next year, correct? At this point.
Absolutely. There's still not a budget for this fiscal year.
Right. But I mean, there is money, it just hasn't been allocated. I mean, because we all pay taxes. It's just that the money hasn't been allocated or divvied up however it gets done.
Well,
I don't know how much money. I'm sorry, Ann, go ahead.
I was just going
trying
to
to
say,
figure out, you know.
it's really difficult to do any kinds of calculations with, you know, what's sitting in the checkbook at the comptroller's office. I mean, it's really, it's very difficult. I think that the key here is that any kind of payments that are made must be appropriated by the General Assembly in a spending bill. And that's
not it.
You know, it can be all the money in the world, Kathy, but if there's no authority to spend.
Right.
And go ahead,
Does it
Lauren.
get spent?
I'm not really sure that there is all the money in the world and that it is sitting somewhere in the state treasury, simply because we are spending for those portions of state government that are appropriated or are working under a court order. They are spending at levels that they were spending at in FY15. And in FY16, we are not operating under the same income tax rate that we were operating under in FY15.
Right.
Consequently, there is a growing backlog of unpaid bills that are stacking up. So any appropriation authority in the world is great. If the treasurer does not have the money in the funds to cover the checks won't be issued. One of the problems that we have with the $16 million in Live and Learn funding that we received for public library and system per capita grants is that is all Live and Learn funding, which is fed by a transfer from the General Revenue Fund, which the Live and Learn Fund did receive a transfer recently from GRF, but that just paid off what it was owed for FY15. So far in FY16, there have been no transfers from GRF to the Live and Learn Fund. So consequently, when we do get revised plans of service and we do approve them and we write the vouchers, we don't know how quickly you're actually going to get that money. It could be a long wait. So that's another factor in this whole equation that no one knows for sure what the answer is.
All right, thank you.
All right, thank you. All right, let's move down to new business if there's no other comments or anything for the State Library at this time. And we'll move down to membership changes. Amanda?
On December 15th, I visited the Big Rock Historical Society Library and determined this library meets all Rails membership requirements. The Membership Development and Resource Sharing Department would like to request the Rails Board recommend to the Illinois State Library approval of membership for this library. This is a nice size collection for a historical society. They have a variety of materials, including popular and local historical materials. And the library manager is a resident of Big Rock, so she's very familiar with the community and their patrons. And she's also a part-time library staff member at the Gail Borden Library, so she has great library experience. She's very enthusiastic, and she is fairly new. She started in December, so she's excited about her new position. Are there any questions about this library?
I was curious with their collection of just a little over 8,000, how much of that is artifact? I mean, I noticed it,
Great question, yes. Okay, so they have, the last 2 years, they had a lot of donations from the community. So I would say about a third of that is local history and artifacts, and then the rest are popular materials and nonfiction books as well.
And have they looked at are they planning? I know it doesn't mention digitization,
Yes,
but
that is in the work. It's probably not going to be for a year or two.
Okay.
They are considering joining Prairie Cat.
Okay.
Their collection is mostly, I forget what, I think I mentioned the catalog. I forget what it is.
It's
offhand.
ResourceMate?
Yes, ResourceMate. Yes,
Pretty
correct. Yes, that's it. It's not online, but they are looking and going that direction. Hopefully when they can join Prairie Cat.
Cool. That's very neat.
This is Nan with a comment. I think it's wonderful for for us to branch out beyond traditional libraries and to be looking at institutions like historical societies as possible Rails members. So I hope that's something we can target, even to identify and maybe working with the museums people in Illinois to make a connection there. That might be very helpful. That's all.
Right. Sounds good. Any other comments, questions? All right, then I will entertain a motion for approval of to approve the staff recommendation for full membership status for this one.
So moved.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. All in favor say aye.
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 All opposed? Motion passed. Great. Thank you, Amanda. All right. Moving on to unfinished business, D.
Yeah.
Board reports.
Thank you. So, we provide a lot of reports for you for obviously important reasons, so that you know what we're doing, so that you can monitor our activities and our budget. They're very useful for us, particularly the operations report. When we do the annual report, we all go back and look at it to remind us. I'm sure you guys do that too in your own libraries. However, we do spend a lot of time on them, and so we just want to be sure that the reports are useful to you in their current level of detail, specificity, just general content, when you get them every month, all those things, so that there is a good synergy between the amount of time we spend and what you get out of them. This is not any attempt, nor is it any suggestion to not do these reports. We just wanted to check in because we haven't ever really talked about them as an actual thing. So, comments, suggestions?
Well, I for one I find it very useful just in keeping informed myself, but I also use them for updating my board on what's going on with Rails, and I also do an update at the CCS governing board meeting. So like next week, I'll mention some of the things, and it's helpful for me because I have all the stuff in my library going on, and it's great for me to go back to as a resource and to direct people to if they want even more information. So I use them
multiple ways,
yes. So, and find it very useful, and also to refresh my brain when it's like, when did we do that? And looking back, because it is a very detailed report. So,
and I find that while I like to think I'm fairly aware of what's going on here, because I know I talk to Dee a little more often, I'm always finding something I didn't know.
Yeah.
So probably more so with the LSAPs, because that's an area that I'm not real familiar with, even with my own. But I find them really helpful. So
I would say, as prior to becoming a board member, go ahead.
Go ahead, Nan.
This is Nan, and I think the reports are very helpful because it gives us an opportunity to read the information ahead of time, note things that are going on, and then we can amplify it. So often in our meetings, as with any board meeting, we often tend to rush through, and this way it forces the staff and also forces us as board members to really read and understand what's going on. That's all.
I found it really useful.
Go for it, Dane.
I really like the reports from the perspective of understanding the activities that are going on. I think what would help as a board member is understanding more about what are the activities designed to achieve? What are the outcomes? Are we being effective in achieving those outcomes through the activities? Because I see a lot of activities, but I'm just trying to figure out, are we doing what we are? Does this get us someplace that we want to go? And being very deliberate and intentional about that. So I think it may require like looking at each thing and figuring out what is the point of this.
So that is, of course, a very important point. And that's why we've rearranged or reorganized the report according to the strategic plan, sort of general goals. But maybe we need to be sure that we draw a more descriptive relationship every so often, too.
Yeah, especially as board members come on and off the board.
Right.
But I also find them helpful, and many times I'll pass them on to staff or other members of my library. So.
So maybe like a biannual, because I know we always do the strategic plan review, and so maybe instead of once a year, twice a year would be helpful to look and really tie it together, like Dane was saying.
I think we were doing it. How often did we do it last year?
We're doing it quarterly.
We're doing it
Were we
quarterly.
doing it quarterly?
We kind of this year seems probably strange, but we don't because our plan of service didn't get approved. You know, it's just
Maybe
all
that's
been a little
why.
bit.
Okay.
Yeah.
There hasn't been one since June, I guess, because we didn't know what to. It's just weird, like Ann said. It's a bizarre year.
Weird year.
Okay.
I do like the library summaries that we do. I know at one point I don't think we gave that much information.
You mean the membership?
The membership
Yeah.
library
Yeah,
summaries
that's
that we
been really
do.
great.
But that's been very helpful. Gives us a little bit broader range of new people entering the system. So that's very positive.
That was Kate's idea. And mine.
But
You
it's
can
very,
own it.
Very helpful.
That was a suggestion from you guys.
Yeah.
Because you always had the questions, and so we just decided to provide the answers.
Before, so that's a good thing.
It was an attempt to have me ask fewer questions.
It was, I know.
It was all about.
I would just add, as a person prior to my tenure on the board, as someone who's interested in the regional library system, I found the reports, particularly the operational report, very helpful in grasping what the system was doing.
Because we all know that you read every possible.
I do. I'm reading your I'm reading your home library's board minutes. You can count on it.
All right. Well, I think we get the message. That's great. Like I say, we just wanted to do a check-in on this. A lot of time, and we really appreciate it. And we will try to do something different to kind of connect the goal with the activity, because that's very important. And also, Mary and I will put our heads together about the strategic plan update.
Okay.
That's great. Thank you.
All right. Let's move down to 9.2, the 2016 budget. Dee?
Oh, yes, let's. Okay, so as Ann, thank you, Ann, for that great update that got us off to a good start. I think there's a lot of things that we need to talk about. I want to say, first of all, I think it's very important that we keep in mind that this is the beginning of our conversation about this year and changes and next year. There's a lot that's still unknown. There's a lot more, conversation we need to have with Heartland and with Chicago Public Library, particularly related to talking books. In fact, after this meeting, there is a conference call between Brian and me and Leslie and Ann to kind of update each other where we are in terms of, communicating out and, plans and things like that. So these are obviously very complex, difficult issues with lots of far-reaching and long-lasting implications for members and system staff. I'm sure you have lots of questions, and we will certainly have answers to a lot of those questions, but some we may have to go back and find out, because it's breaking news.
Breaking news.
So there's any number of places that we can start. We can start with the letters from the State Library, although I think Ann, as I say, already got us off to a good start on that. We could begin with a discussion of the Executive Committee meeting and why that group, discussed what they discussed. Jim gave you some good budget information. I think that's a good basis, beginning basis to have the conversation. You may have more questions about talking book services in particular, as in terms of like what we do versus what Heartland does versus what CPL does, and what would be lost if we didn't provide the service, or what might happen, for patrons. You may have questions about Heartland, because Heartland's particular specific situation is very pertinent. It's one of the reasons why this is happening now. It's my belief, and Ann may be able to be a resource on this. It's my understanding that they will just have enough money to finish out the fiscal year, which is why the timing of the payments is so crucial. Yes, Carrie.
Well, I'll just make a few general comments and then listen. But and I think there are really a couple areas. One's talking books, which is separate than the plan of service, being the other. And regarding the plan of service, I think the two most important things there are, while there's uncertainty in Springfield, the uncertainty is going to be resolved sooner or later. And the question is, at what point in time does Rails make what are radical and kind of drastic changes to the plan of service? And that ties into what our reserve position is. If we had zero reserves, it'd be different than if we had the substantial amount of reserves that we have now. And what's the purpose of having those reserves if it's not to tide us over in a period of uncertainty? And so from my standpoint, it seems that the time for Rails to be making any radical changes in plan of service is once we know how things are resolved in Springfield, because it might be that it's resolved in a manner that we continue to get the funding level we have, in which case, if we make radical changes now, they would have been for naught and just cause a lot of disruption. And we might have to be, for example, if we had to lay off people and then hire people back, what's the point in that? And if there is some radical change in funding from Springfield, let's wait till we know what that is and then decide what the actual numbers, make choices based on what the actual numbers are going to be. On the talking books one, I think that it seems like there's a choice between either turning it over to the regional system and hoping they'll find the money to keep it at the level that would be considered acceptable by our board and the other boards. And if our board and the other boards, and I think one of my questions is when you have your conversation with them, find out how important it is to them to try to ensure there will be a continued level of service, because it seems like the one way to ensure a continued level of service would involve Rails and the others having to fund it for fiscal year 2017 rather than risk it going to the regional library. Whether the Rails board wants to do that or not, I don't know, nor do I know if Chicago or Heartland has any interest in doing that. But it seems to be accept the uncertainty, transition it, accept the uncertainty that the level of service may drop or might not drop, or try to control it ourselves by working with Heartland and Chicago to take over that cost. So that's my comment.
And I will just say, as part of the executive committee meeting last week, because it was like the first time that we had really talked about it, we took more of a let's not do radical changes and let's look and see what's playing out, see what we can do or can't do to help with that. And I would also hate to see talking book service change drastically, having talked to some of those patrons of talking book service and know how they have those personal connections with people that they deal with for Reader's Advisory and everything. So I think we have to make sure we can continue that service at the level we have.
Well, and I think in the executive committee meeting, Rails is fortunate that we are in a position, well, if we don't receive another dime for another year and a half, we can still maintain at the level we're at. Not that we should, but we can.
Right.
So agreeing with Carrie, and as like I said, we discussed in executive session, it's kind of
Executive committee.
Executive committee, sorry. I got an executive session this week. Just that we, kind of rushing to do anything drastic doesn't make sense for us as Rails, in my opinion, and that's the take I took from the executive committee meeting as well. But certainly being responsible is part of that. But not only fiscally responsible, but I feel as a board member, we need to be responsible for our patrons who we are serving, and especially in the Talking Books. Of all the patrons that we are serving, that is a group that cannot get less service, and funding, if we have it, I think it's important that we provide it. I understand that it may not be coming down the road, but this is just like a 6-month situation. What if things do change? But if we don't, we still have a transitional time that we can work on.
And it's not something that can easily be replicated by any of our area libraries to
quickly.
To step up, yeah.
And just as a point of budget information. Oh, sorry, Dane. It's a very small.
Yeah.
It's less than 1 month of our total expenditure. But
the impact
is. Yes, Dane. I'm sorry.
Oh no, thank you. I guess I have a somewhat dissenting opinion, and that is that these are extraordinary times. We have no idea when the budget will be resolved. And that I think librarians of all people would be the kind of people that want to make sure that we are serving all of our patrons throughout the state. And I think this is the time for us to work together. Maybe the board should get together with the state library and have a summit to talk about how do we deal with the situation that we're in.
Dave.
Sorry, I didn't mean to put it.
I'm sorry.
Oh, were you done, Dane? I'm sorry.
Yes, I am. Go ahead.
Okay.
Yeah, these are extraordinary times, and we just don't know yet. And from what I took out of the executive board meeting, it's kind of like, we don't know yet, but we're looking forward to the patrons across the entire state of Illinois, specifically Heartland, and what we could do to help them through these times. We don't know yet. We don't know how it should be structured. It should be a loan, intergovernmental agreement. I have no idea. But I think we're thinking along those lines, that we want to help the entire state, not just our patrons, but we have a responsibility in some areas. And that's what I took away from the executive meeting.
Well, Carrie and I have talked, and Paul and I talked a little bit about this board is elected to be the Rails board. There's a fiduciary responsibility, but yes, I also feel that we have a responsibility to all the libraries in Illinois. I mean, it's a somewhat arbitrary line. It's just what's the balance for that? And I think that I'm just going to say it right out. I would not be comfortable with a loan or just paying the bills. I think that if I would feel irresponsible if I didn't also have some say in how this board didn't have some say in how the service is delivered.
Exactly.
It's just.
To look at a discrete chunk of this, going back to the Talking Book Centers, I'm really glad that you're going to have that conversation later today with the other interested parties. And given the amount of money, I would like to see us provide a transition period so that we don't have to make any drastic decisions like Carrie was saying for that discrete service. It's a smaller amount of money. I'm sure we can gather information for what Heartland spends on this, what Chicago spends on this. We know what we spend on it, and give us some time to figure that out. That seems a very discrete action that we can figure out and see what funding they can possibly contribute to, giving us an interim period to see what happens, and I'll decide a good, sensible path forward. And I would certainly, on the other topic, second with Dee, I do think we have a strong fiduciary responsibility as elected representatives for this particular service area for how that money's spent, and to give that money or loan that money without there being some clear governance on our part would not be appropriate.
Right. I mean, it's not like we deliver all the services that our members need with the money that we have. So, right? I mean, we can't meet all the needs. We try, and we have, at this point, a great reserve. But yeah, that's very important, I think.
So, getting back to the Talking Book and Braille service again. is there anything in the statute that would prohibit us from looking for additional outside funding? I mean, I know that we're supposed to be funded through our Liberty Loan Grant, but this is kind of separate. So are there other opportunities for, if worst case scenario happens and we don't get additional funding next year, but looking for external sources, foundations? I mean, I can think of grants that surely must be out there that could be applied for. This is not just, this is an established service that has very measurable results, that has a huge impact.
High impact.
So is that even possible?
I think, yes, and I think that's one thing that Brian Bannon is definitely working on.
Okay.
And that's at Chicago Public.
Yeah, Chicago, sorry.
Yeah.
Thanks, Mary Jo. On behalf of the entire service, and I want to also, I know Dane had to go, but I want to assure all of you that we really are working very closely together on this. I mean, we've had a lot of conversations among the State Library and CPL and Heartland and me, so this is, I don't think a joint board meeting is a bad idea either, but I can tell you that the staff is certainly very engaged with each other about this.
Mm-hmm.
I do think that when the word about this begins to spread publicly, that money may show up. I believe that is what happened, or similar to what happened when the merger in 2010 took place. Is that correct, Jane?
Yeah, before the merger. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So because the Talking Book services at that point were, I don't know if they were going to be eliminated, but and they were certainly consolidated, but.
What happened at that point is that was when the systems weren't getting their funding. The funding, it's a cash flow issue. The Talking Book grants hadn't come through either, so the systems were paying for the Talking Book expenses out of their general fund, and it did get to the point where that was no longer sustainable because of the cash flow issue at the systems, and so there was basically an advocacy campaign at that point, and the funds started to flow.
Again, that's part of the uncertainty. We don't know if that might happen. That would change things again if we
definitely a talking point.
If money came, right, which are coming up.
Yeah.
2 weeks, yeah.
So can you maybe recap some of the conversations that you've had with Heartland and Chicago? And I know the State Library, Ann has already given us a bit of an update, but
in terms of Talking Books?
Yes. Let's stick with Talking Books, and then that seems to be where we're at the moment.
Yeah, okay. Well, and please, Ann or Lauren, correct me if I'm wrong. Is it the case that Heartland is going to shut down their Talking Book or their machine lending service sooner rather than later this fiscal year? Can they go through June? Will they go through June?
I don't have a date, Dee. I don't have a date, Dee, but I don't anticipate that the machine lending agency would go any later than July 1. They do not have funds, to my knowledge, that would supplant the grant from the State Library in their other monies.
So Heartland is the machine lending agency for the whole state. Is that right?
Yes, and we do have fairly concrete plans internally to begin to absorb that operation here. We do not anticipate that will be any issue in terms of our own staffing or space or anything like that. So we've already started talking about that, and we're pretty far along with that. But we haven't, because we don't know what you all are doing or what's happening in fiscal 17, we haven't talked about anything internally other than the machines.
Got it. So seems likely then that the machine lending will go to Springfield by the end of the fiscal year. We do not do that here at all. We do outreach and advisory, readers advisory.
Could you remind me what Chicago does then in this?
I'm going to ask Rose to answer that because I get confused.
Okay.
I was going to say, Rose, do you want to move up to the table?
So what does Chicago
do that we don't
provide?
Yeah.
Or even that we do?
Yeah.
What's the scope of their service?
They're a full sub-regional. We're an advisory outreach center. It means that they have a collection. So they still check out books from the state library as well as their own collection. One of the things that's very nice about them being part of a public library is they have an assistive technology center where people can go and learn how to use the equipment and use it for their own purposes. That's a very important thing. They do a lot of programs in person with the blind and physically handicapped. Whether it's book discussion or whether they're bringing in speakers and things like that. They plan and run the statewide reading program twice a year. We had one just start this month. And one of the things that's really unique about them that we depend on heavily is that they have people who work at the state library that speak all kinds of languages.
At CPL. At Chicago Public. Right.
Chicago Public. Duh. Sorry.
No.
And with all the languages that we handle, let alone even more that they handle, we can serve those patrons adequately because we have access to people that can tell us who they are and possibly even carry on the conversations if necessary. And they do a lot of outreach, and outreach can be a lot more complicated and much more intense there. Patrice Johnson, who is head of their reader advisors, goes out and speaks to nursing homes where everybody there speaks a language she doesn't. So, it's a very different kind of outreach. Mm-hmm.
Which is why this has been such a great collaborative piece. Service.
Are there services and collection then available statewide?
Yes.
So they're theoretically available, but in practice, their collections are available.
Yes.
And they do services beyond the boundaries of the city.
They don't. We have our patrons; they have their patrons. We have our own databases that we control and handle their circulation, make the orders, and that type of thing. But we can, when we request books, we take the one that is the quickest available. Actually, Klaus handles that itself. That's our automation system. So most of the things obviously come from the state library, but a lot of it also comes from Chicago.
So what size is their collection?
I have no idea.
Or a percentage? Anne, do you know?
Sharon Ruda, the head of our Talking Book and Braille service, can best address these specific questions. Hang on one sec.
Hi there, everybody. I'm sorry, I didn't hear what your question was.
I was curious what the size of Chicago's physical collection was versus the state libraries. Like what percentage, or if you have actual numbers.
I don't have with me the size of their collection. I can tell you that they check out about 135,000 books a year, and we check out about 600,000.
It's a very fast circulating collection, right, Sharon? A lot of the most popular things.
You mean here in Springfield?
No, in Chicago.
Chicago has a lot more of the foreign language copies than we do. They also, this is more than you want to know, but years ago when we were changing to the digital format, the system, the Talking Book Centers at that time divided up that retrospective collection, and Chicago has part of that retrospective collection that we don't have here at the State Library. But we're working towards getting the lower numbers here because the way our circulation system works, which is all one for the entire state, it selects us first. And so a patron would get, well, the patrons that are in the rest of the state from then Chicago, their books are selected from us, and we don't have them. So they select our books first, and they never get those books out of Chicago. So that's one of the things we're working on. I think that's probably more than you wanted to know.
No,
That's interesting.
And can I also ask then about the machine lending and how many machines there are physically and what the annual circulation is on those that'll be moving to the state?
I can certainly tell you that if you'll give me a minute to go through my sheets here. I can tell you that we have 3 people on staff right now who were originally machine lending agents.
When we did it.
When we did it. And we moved that service to the, when the Shawnee Library, Talking Book Library closed, they reopened as a machine lending agency. And we actually shipped all the stuff down, all the machines down to them from our location so that they could handle it. Now we'll just be starting all over again. Give me a minute here. I can tell you the number of books, or the number of machines they sent out in a minute here.
I was curious if someone knows how many staff currently work at the machine sublending agency in Hartford.
4.
Thank you.
No, full-time?
I think so.
They're all full-time. And
Okay.
last year, for fiscal year 15, they checked out 1,700
Okay. Do we know how large the collection is?
You keep
how many
machines
there are? Discrete machines?
I don't have that statistic in front of me, but because the federal government is recalling all the old cassette machines, that's one of the things that IMSS has been working on diligently. But now that machines are so plentiful, usually what you strive to have on hand is about 300 machines, which would be approximately 3 months, 300 to 400 machines, which is 3 months supply.
Okay.
Okay. All right. Thanks, Sharon.
You're welcome.
Carrie has
Carrie.
In light of what's said, and it sounds like the machines are going back to state already, if the priority and goal is really to keep the Talking Book service in effect at the same level, then it seems, as opposed to who's got control of it, maybe the best thing is for the state to review and tell the system boards what's the most it can take on with assurance that it'll be kept at the same level as now, and then leave it to the system boards to decide if they're willing to pick up the rest, the cost of the rest.
That makes sense.
And Rose, I don't know if you even thought this through or anything. Have you thought of anything that we can do to better spend the money that we do get for Talking Books? I'm sure you probably already started thinking about this.
Has.
Yeah.
Yeah. Mine's been going 90 miles.
That, with our limited funding, perhaps Rails can continue on what we're doing using the funding we're getting from the state and some money from our budget to maintain the quality of service.
Some of the things that we can do better, well, actually, one of the things that we're doing at this point in time that we discussed as the Talking Book directors in December is sending our interlibrary loans to the state, and they are handling a lot of those now. Some people interlibrary loan 20 or 30 books at a time. So that is handled, most of it is being handled, from what I understand, at the state library. We are having discussions with the staff probably starting next week. I've sent them some information to think about on how the statistics vary between reader advisors and what our priorities are, and so that we're all on the same page and doing things the same way. So that's one of the things that's coming up. Starting today, it's one of the things we wanted to get into, and we're starting it today and again in 3 weeks, I guess it is. We're starting doing some BARD training in some of the public libraries, so that when things move to the state library, maybe the libraries can help train patrons, even meet a center that they can patrons can come in and they download for them. But getting that information out there and helping that. Now, one of the things that we can do is also do an extensive outreach. Because even though one of the things that's very frustrating to us, and I know it was to Sharon as well, when we did the transition to Burr Ridge, they had lots of things in their newsletters. They put things out in their weekly, the Talking Book newsletters. But when it came to even the weekly email that comes out from the state, there was a lot of information that ITBOC was existing. We sent out an email, a huge package of materials just about a year ago to all the public libraries in the state that explained all our services. And as far as we can tell, most of those were thrown away. Because any of the patrons, any of the staff that we've talked to who handle Talking Books, whether it's circulation or reference or outreach, none of them saw any of that material. So we would help get a lot of the information out by visiting libraries, meeting with groups, and that type of thing, helping them, making the transition much smoother. Because people for a long time thought we disappeared. And it's helping them understand who you call, how it works.
Okay.
First on. But we are always looking at how we can do things a little more efficiently. Probably one of the things that we would do, which we actually did just this week as well, is we figured out a way that we can do as much of our mailing to our patrons through email. And that's the first time we've done something like that, and it's for the winter reading program. Because that's going to save a lot of work of copying and stuffing and folding and all that type of thing. So, but a large percentage of our patrons are extremely low tech. They're on limited budgets. They are, because a lot of them go blind as they get older. So learning how to use technology they're unfamiliar with, let alone as you're blind, is much more complicated. So the low tech of getting things in print or from another format, which the State Library provides with a recording, or Braille, is something that's always going to be a complication. But getting as many people connected to BARD as we can, I think, is the number one thing we need to do.
Okay.
And unfortunately, the situation right now is unfortunate, but it actually could serve as, a really good opportunity for that outreach, because people's awareness, and so it making the best of the situation we're in.
That's right.
Yeah, exactly. So that might serve to help increase that, which would in turn, perhaps leverage additional support and have, better long-term consequences.
So Dee, what do we need to do? We could talk about it all day.
For talking.
Yeah.
At least for Talking Books.
You need to give me some general guidance, I think, in terms of Talking Books.
Well, I liked Carrie's suggestion of find out what the state library can do and financially, and what kind of changes to the program will that mean, and if it's changes that are going to be detrimental for our patrons, then see what the systems, at least Rails. I'm sure Heartland may not be able to do much, but Rails certainly, we have the money to continue. Mm-hmm. We know that.
Yes.
So I think that might be an option, but certainly to find out from the state library first what they can do with what they have.
Yeah, and it seems like I could see where Chicago control might be a bigger issue with them than it is with Rails. If our goal is mainly keeping the level of service going. But since you're going to have this call right after this meeting with all the interested people, it seemed like
just keep working together to try to come to the best possible solution, I guess.
So you could report back at the next board meeting, or even before the next board meeting, email. So at the next board meeting, maybe we'll be in position to make some decisions on this issue.
Has Brian from CPS made any comments about what they could possibly do to continue their services if the state library cannot?
He is looking for alternative funding. We had a couple of really good phone calls about, so that we all understood the effect that this had on internally, and I also connected Brian with Kip Kochmeyer so that he was the ILA
from ILA
lobbyist, so that Brian could get a really clear picture of kind of the budget process in general, and because it's hard, and he hasn't been here very long, so he said he was going to go off and talk to the various legislative people and the mayor and the speaker and all of the people that you would talk to about getting some general revenue funds just for the system, for the APC as well as for Talking Books. So we'll see how that all plays out, but I mean that's another piece of the uncertainty, of course, but it's at least uncertainty on a positive side as opposed to a negative side.
Mm-hmm. I would certainly agree with the consensus that you put in your letter, D, from the executive committee about figuring out a good transition plan for our services with the possibility of using some of our reserve funds to provide what is going to be the best way to continue this service forward. I think we're on the right path, and that's what I've certainly been hearing here in our conversation too. That's a measured approach to making sure a valuable service is continued.
Right.
And I think also knowing just what impact this, I know that Rose has given us just wonderful data, but just as a reminder of the impact and the number of people this would impact, not only, staffing-wise within, the consortia, and I know, we're in the fortunate position that we can fund it, but, statewide, what that impact would be, but also what the impact could potentially be on the patrons.
Sure. We will work on that.
Okay.
In conjunction with the other providers.
All the other everything.
No, I think that absolutely has to be done anyway.
Yeah.
And legislative stuff is, we have a few weeks. That would be a wonderful talking card to, to have at those, because, I know Bob always has the palm cards, but to have that there, ready to give concrete numbers to the impact would be, to be able to show the per capita cost and the effectiveness that is would be huge. So.
Okay. Let's move on to the discussion about the plan of service for 2016.
Okay.
It's 6 months into the year already.
7.
Yeah, it's January, where we haven't had an approved plan, and we've been working under 2015. Some of those things that 2016 included were raises for our staff. As we continue, they're still sitting there. no one's gotten those. And we have some disparity that we know in our staff schedule.
We had,
that we had planned to take care of in the 2016.
Yeah.
I am not suggesting a massive overhaul to 2016 at this point, because we've been surviving under 2015. If there are some changes that we could make, like I know that we could always, put off enhancements to the building. We have that money sitting there. We have no leaking roofs, ceilings, kind of thing.
We've done all the things that
we've done all the.
Would
you
say that
out loud? Well, I'm just saying.
Crashing down on her now.
Yeah, it'll probably come crashing down. But we've taken care. What I wanted to say was that we've taken care of the immediate physical comfort things that we needed to do that are in 2016, or not even in there, but in building issues that need to for life safety, that we need to be safe. We've taken care of a lot of those, right, Mark?
That is correct.
I'm not saying we're done. Okay. I'm not saying we're done. There are other things to be done. But could we look? I don't know. Do we look at 2016? Do we say, okay, fine, 2016 hasn't come, and we go come March 1st when we start on 2017, do we say, okay, fine, we work with our 2015 plan of service, not do anything about the 2016 that's in there, but concentrate on 2017 and going forward? And I think that because we have that long-range plan that we did, I think we looked and said, what do we need to do to remain viable in the forthcoming time? It's just a thought. Please.
I have a question. There's been a request to revise this current year's plan of service. Is that completely? Because if it's going to be completely, and it's due March 31st, and then our new one is due, May 1st or April 30th or something like that?
Usually.
So I'm not really sure what we have to revise. I mean, we've been working on the numbers from the previous plan of service because the other one hasn't been approved. So what do we have to tweak? Or do we have to have the plan of service technically approved as an appropriation document to get the money that we may or may not get? I'm just not sure how that works.
Well, in a phone conversation I had with Ann and Lauren and Cindy the other day, we talked about this, and we all agree that revising 16 and then doing 17 is a lot of work, and that
they don't want to read any more than we want to do.
Well, exactly, and we kind of pledged to work together on how to make that as least labor intensive as possible. I think that, my preference would be that we probably have to revise our budget to indicate the new numbers that we have at this point, which, as Ann pointed out, maybe will be different on March 31st, but this is the assumption for now. And maybe we identify certain things that we're not going to do this year, like, changes to the building that we obviously won't do. Hiring, we were going to hire catalogers or something. And we were going to do use the cataloging maintenance center in Heartland. Probably not a good time to be doing that.
Yeah.
So, kind of take those kinds of things out. But really, for the most part, so here's what's in our plan of service. Okay, member visits and networking. Well, we're not going to stop doing that.
Can't.
LSAP grants, well, that's done, and that's website redesign is almost done. The Burridge building we already talked about. We're not going to stop doing e-read. We already did the delivery outsourcing. we have to keep doing training. There's no reason to stop doing training at this point because it's so important, and we have the money to do it. Really, it's the HR pieces and the capital piece, I think. And in terms of the raises, I don't know what to say to you about that. I mean, I think you can certainly make two, opposing arguments, as always. This is the time to show the staff how much you support them and want to invest in them. It's only 100 and whatever it is that Jim always tells me.
50 total compensation.
Yeah. And then I personally think that fixing the salary structure is one of the most important things that we could and should do just totally overall, because the salaries hadn't even been looked at in 5 years. And that's just, so fixing that, which isn't very expensive. It's much less than the raises. And then, there's the whole issue that's beginning discussions with Heartland about, providing some of those services. I mean, that in itself is going to be extremely time-consuming.
Sure. Just transitioning that.
Or just having the conversations.
Well, and maybe you might want to talk about those couple of pieces.
Okay.
About Heartland.
About what Heartland would need from us.
But Kathy, before we transition to that, I mean, I think I'd like to a little bit more about the plan of service. I mean, I think that what Dee was outlining, if we can do a light modification to meet the new budget realities that we're facing this year, that would be good, because I do understand, as a former system person, I understand the importance of having your plan of service completed and being an accurate document for expending public resources. But if we can do the light modification like that, so we can concentrate on those other resources, that would be great. And also following up with something that Carrie said. It's great to see you in person, by the way, Carrie.
I know.
It's a pleasure. Carrie, in an earlier conversation, had touched upon, the lack, and I am paraphrasing, so correct me if I'm wrong, Carrie, but, he talked about the lack of rationality in looking at doing layoffs and rehiring people. And along with that sense, I would like to see support for our staff during this rather, difficult time. When we look at what parts to excise from the current plan of service, I don't think those would be rational ones to excise at this point, given, as Jim has pointed out, the relatively low expenditure it would be versus the high cost we'd have in another situation of losing talented staff and then trying to reacquire the talent, the wonderful talent that we have.
Well, and I think that
I'm looking at you, Veranda.
But, I think Paul makes a really good point. Very cogent. And, for me, it's also about looking at the long view. And if you don't recognize staff now, I mean, we've seen this happen at local libraries. I can think of one where it's happening right now, very visibly. And it is... If you sacrifice, the staff because you're panicking, because when you don't know what's going to happen, you will lose all of the fabulous, wonderful staff, and it will be, difficult, if not impossible, to regain that level. And short-term actions can have very long-term consequences. And I, for one, think that now more than ever, it's critical that we, as Dee had said, that we show the staff that we are supportive and that we do need to do this. I would be very uncomfortable and very against changing that at all in the 2016 plan of service. I'm much more comfortable changing the capital projects, not because, because Mark has already made everything very safe, so we also know there won't be any workers' comp claims because the ceiling won't come falling down. So, but I do think that is something, because they're under tremendous stress now, because you're all living with a constant state of uncertainty, and that has huge stress, and so there has to be some counterbalance to that, and it's up to us to show that we not only understand that, but that we are taking active steps in order to help you deal with it, even if it's only, making salary adjustments or doing the increases.
But, Kate, on the other hand, we could then hire this talented rail staff.
I have no idea what Paul's talking about. I would never attempt to steal.
She would
valuable.
never steal from
unless absolutely necessary.
Yes.
Carrie.
I agree with both Paul and Kate, and I think it can be fiscally more damaging to incur the costs of brain drain and people leaving because they're not being shown the support that they should be given than to provide them with the support. So I agree with that.
And we don't know if it's going to be permanent.
No, and
There's uncertainty right now.
That's true. I mean, we are, and it's not luck. I mean, this board and the staff has been, very prudent and very aggressive about building the reserve in a variety of ways. So, and I have to say that, I'm really proud of our staff. I'm really proud of what everybody does, and I'm really proud of this organization and the board and how we all work together. And I would like to not start dismantling it before it's really necessary. It's very difficult to build it.
We've come a long way in 5 years.
Absolutely.
A long way.
Yep.
And I think given what happened 5 years ago, there's the added bonus of taking a show of support that we know that we can weather this storm because we don't know what's going to happen, that will also reassure, hopefully to a certain extent, our member libraries.
Yeah.
Because they are also, I'm sure, going to be asking a lot of questions.
Yeah, once these letters are made public, our patrons are going to ask questions. Our patrons and our member libraries are going to start asking questions about what.
But we also want to, just looking at what happened, previous to the Rails merge, library systems got really comfortable having lots of money and then just started, spending it up. So we need to, while we have lots of money, we need to be, learn from that lesson and spend it prudently and always be reevaluating what we're doing and is it the best way to spend it. So we just need to make sure, because I can guarantee that's some comments that we're going to get.
Yes, absolutely.
Next month.
Especially in certain areas.
Have you received any guidance from us?
Yes, I have guidance.
From the board.
Oh, okay.
So that she can move forward.
Oh, right now.
You want us to give you stuff to do.
And what do you? I would appreciate a little bit more conversation about the Heartland. I mean, I guess
yes.
you're.
I think that's a discrete topic after the plan is. And thank you, Kathy, for letting me, step back from that conversation for a minute so we could finish the plan of service.
Okay.
You're a good person.
Thank you.
Okay. So moving on to what we may be able to do for Heartland to help them survive and continue to provide service to not only our patrons and our member libraries, but all of the member libraries across the state, because some of those things we can do easily. We're doing the relatively easy.
Yeah.
One thing that we're already doing is the SkillsSoft, which I know a lot of public libraries, it is the right program, right? SkillsSoft, we're using for training of staff members. And that's something that we're able to do across the state now.
Very cheaply, $7,500 for 6 months.
Yeah, very, very inexpensively in the grand scheme of things. And I think that only helps better the library community as a whole in the state, and that'll benefit us down the road.
So I just, I need to understand how you feel about how you want to balance the fiduciary responsibility and the statewide need, I guess.
Has Heartland asked for help? I mean, what specifically are they asking for?
They are not asking. State Library has asked both of us to work together.
I guess I would like to see a list of all of their, all of the services, what things are Heartland only, like, their shared catalog, versus what things impact the state, or, most importantly, the areas where Heartland and Rails abut, there might be more crossover, and what the number is for each of those things in terms of expenditures or need. Because, I know we do so much, I can't possibly keep it all in my head, hence the need for the wonderful monthly reports. But I don't know, does Heartland have different, I know they do the OCLC billing, but what other things?
Okay. Related to that, there might be areas that Rails could do much more efficiently and economically. The OCLC, if we took that over, but it'd be exact same cost, to me that'd be a lower priority of something to look at helping them than some other area like delivery or other ones that we could do at lower cost than what they're paying to have done. So it'd also be helpful to, when looking at these areas, kind of prioritize them based on that. What can we do that would be the biggest savings overall if Rails became involved?
Okay.
One thing I would add to that, Dee, if we are to provision some services for Heartland, there needs to be, and in this agreement we work out, I don't know what form that needs to take among ISL and Heartland and Rails, but there needs to be some proportional compensation based on the income that's become available for the services that we provision. That's one of the only ways I'm going to feel comfortable with us doing that those revenues for those particular services and whatever portions available that might have gone to Heartland needs to come to Rails. And the details that's a lot of details to work out, but hopefully that's that's my opinion on what I think would need to happen.
But could we get I would be curious, it seems like we're all maybe on the same page in terms of not giving a loan or just giving Heartland money. Would that be safe to say? Are there any board members that feel differently?
Can we do that legally?
No, I don't. I think it'd be a breach of our fiduciary duties.
I agree. I just want. Okay, so we know that is.
What about the other sites? Quincy, Judy, what do you think about helping Heartland in any way, shape, or form? Just so we have a kind of consensus from the other sites. Can't hear you yet.
Are they still there?
Somebody's still there.
I guess you're muted.
We can see you waving.
Okay, we're going to try to reconnect you.
We'll come back to you.
Okay, East Peoria, Laura and Karen are there. What do you think about helping Heartland with some of these things in general, just so we kind of have a consensus of where we're going?
This is Laura. In general, I feel like we should be open to helping them, but I'm not really sure what type of help they need. So I feel like, a good first step would be to, and maybe Dee has already done this, just to get some ideas of what do they need help with and what are they asking from us? And, using that as a starting point to making some decisions.
Well, I think delivery is probably a big one, but I'm sorry, Karen, I think.
Yeah. Karen?
Just from some of the documents on the IHLS website, it appears that they have called for a total cut in travel for their staff, that they have called for their proposed 3% raise to be given to their staff be pulled back. That may be because they have agreed to do what the letter requested and say that they shall approve and submit a revised plan of service by March 31st. I couldn't hear what Dave said back in the corner. I can barely see him and I have a little hard time. Did we just pass past saying that we are or we are not going to direct our administration to submit a revised plan of service? Can you just give me a point of clarification on that?
Sure. I think what we decided was to have Dee look at it based on what our new budget numbers are and see what we could possibly change and where that money puts us currently. To move forward, Dave, do you have anything else to add?
No, I mean, basically, that's it.
Right. So essentially, yes, it will be revised because there's some things we won't do, and the budget needs to be revised as well.
But it would not be a complete reworking, was my understanding,
Right.
so that we can then focus on the upcoming F7,
Right.
F-17,
And the
talking
negotiations
books and,
with Heartland.
Yeah.
We've accomplished a lot of what we already.
Yeah.
Yeah. And that we have accomplished a lot of things we had put forward in that plan. So just looking to see where we can trim.
Right.
Okay. Judy, can you hear us now?
Hear you fine.
All right. Now we can hear you.
Good. Okay, I generally would said thus far of services rather than financial help, and that I think particularly to
But you're
plans.
breaking up a lot, Judy. Just hold on a second. What's the deal, Ryan? That's your network. That's your network.
It's your network, Judy.
Sorry, we don't mean to blame the victim.
Yeah. Yeah. It's the Quincy Public Network.
Drives me crazy.
Could you possibly call in and then maybe we would be able to hear you?
Okay.
And then we could hear you. Yeah, call. And then we could hear you clear, I think.
We'll give you the number.
It's on the agenda.
It's on the top of the agenda.
It's on the agenda, Judy.
On the agenda.
At the top.
I can read. It's 1-800-747-5150. Got it?
Okay.
We just want to be able to hear you clearly. So.
That's right.
Your
It's
opinion is
important.
important.
Your opinions are important.
She's got it, I think.
Yeah, I think she found it.
Okay, so you're going to hang her up on, what are you going to do? You're going to.
Okay.
Well, no. Well, you won't be able to see us.
Yeah, but she
won't
can
be able to see us, but we'll be able to hear each other.
Yeah, I'll mute her.
Okay.
And Lori, are you still on the phone? Wilcox. Okay, well,
And Nan's in Vernon.
while we're waiting for Judy to get connected, Nan, what do you think?
Well, first of all, it's been very interesting watching you all because the camera signal is really weird and it looks like you all have some horrible disfiguring diseases. However, I'm sure you don't.
Yes, we do.
No,
It's
the
just
zombie.
man.
It's the zombie
It's good that you
effect
said
here.
Vernon.
But other than that, I think it's good for us as a system that does have the resources to help out where we can, but it would be very useful and helpful to get a thorough statement from IHLS for them to let us know where we can be the best, a priority list and that kind of thing.
Okay.
That's
all
it.
right, Judy,
That's
was
all.
that you?
Hear me? Okay.
Speak up and we'll be able to hear you.
Okay. I would agree generally with what's been said so far in terms of providing help, but rather than direct financial help. And would be particularly interested. I'm getting feedback here. We out here in the hinterlands are really much closer to the Heartland service area than the Rails service area. And I don't know what that would mean to us, but just, seeing continued services down in this part of the state, very important to us.
Absolutely. Okay. Have we? And Lori, are you there? If you're there, I think we're only getting feedback. Because we're getting feedback from somewhere, I hear it. On the phone.
Who's on the phone?
I don't.
Okay. Well, I think I know what you want us to do. Do you feel that way, Jane?
Yes.
Yeah. So we'll work on it and get back to you.
Okay. All right. Shall we move down to Dee's goals? I know she's asked. We have that as an action item.
Yes, I hope I transcribed them properly. And I appreciate your input, especially Laura. Laura took the trouble to write me a couple of emails about things we might do for special libraries, and that was helpful because I don't know. And so that's why we need special librarians on the board.
Absolutely.
And school library.
So here's what Dee has listed for her goals. To complete system membership standards work, develop options to serve the unserved, identify projects for reserve fund use.
Guess we've done that.
Yep, we've done that. Continue to work on goals of the strategic plan. Develop and work on collaborative projects with IHLS. Done. Check mark. Yeah. Encourage patron-centered realignment, merger consolidation of LSAPs and consortia. Continue efforts to reduce OCLC costs. Find alternative solutions for cataloging and interlibrary loan for member libraries. And develop more services for non-public libraries and enhance the role of academic special libraries in Rails. And I think I would add schools to that personally.
I'm sorry. I suppose maybe we should put a goal in now about, I don't know, do you think we need to, about dealing with the...
Well, I mean, these are FY16, so they...
Yeah.
Even though
They
half
mesh.
the year is done, I think it would make sense to add one more for the current
dealing with,
situation.
That was more for next time.
Yes.
Okay.
So then, just for clarification then, these will be through the end of this current fiscal year.
Yes.
And so you'll get to be setting new goals in a couple months.
Yep.
Okay, just so we're
all on the same page.
Yes. I mean, I think a lot of these will carry over.
Yes, I think
but-
these are good goals for
Yeah.
today and years to come, some of them.
I'd like to formally accept these goals.
Thank you.
As modified.
All those in favor, or does this need to be a roll call?
No, it doesn't.
All those in favor of approving these goals for D with the changes that we have noted, say aye, please.
Aye.
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 Opposed?
Great.
Great. Motion passed. These are the goals for D for 2016. Finally, and we will also work to make sure that we get this done on time for the following years.
We should talk about that.
Yes. I was just thinking that very thing. Jane, we're going to move down. 9.4, LSAP definition.
LSAP definition. So you have in your packet a two-page document about the LSAP definition, and as Paul's indicated, that stands for Local Library System Automation Program. Just a little bit of background. Because of the changes that happened with the LSAPs prior to the merger process and shortly after the merger, Rails did form an LSAP task force, and one of their first things that they did was develop a definition of a Rails LSAP, which was approved by the Rails board in March of 2012, and that is on the verso of the second page of this document. Reflected a very traditional understanding of the relationships of LSAPs to systems, but also reflected the changing nature as they move to a more contractual relationship. Since that time, the LSAP task force has been disbanded and replaced by a consortia committee to be more inclusive, because we do have 11 different consortia represented within the Rails area. And that's led to a lot of great conversation and building of relationships among the consortia, especially, I would say, at the board level versus the consortia managers level, which always existed to some point. So Rails would like to be more supportive and offer opportunities for more support for some of these other consortia that have not had the historical relationships. So the first step in that would be revising the definition to make it more inclusive, potentially. It would still be a contractual relationship. So we first took this to the Consortia Futures Subcommittee back in July, had a very spirited discussion at that point, very good discussion, brought it back for a little bit more discussion, but by that point I think people had reached a comfort level with it, and it was approved by the Consortia Futures Subcommittee in early November. At the Consortia Committee this Monday, we presented it there. They were comfortable with it and also approved bringing it forward to the board. So I'd like to highlight just a few of the major changes as I see them, because a lot of the language is the same. So one change is in the support goal, where it notes that Rails' goal is to support shared catalog consortia in its service area. Where previously it talked about Rails being the preferred support provider for shared consortia. And then under the definition piece, under number 1, it clarifies that LSAPs may include non-Rails members. However, they will not be allocated in Rails support. That's certainly our fiduciary responsibility. And thirdly, under number 3, that they are supported by Rails through in-kind and/or financial support, which the mix of that could vary depending on the consortial needs. That's all negotiated in the contracts. There is a definition now in the administrative rules since they were revised. In my opinion, this definition before you just clarifies that in terms of Rails relationships with the consortia and vice versa. I don't see that it's in conflict at all. Questions?
I just want to add one thing, which is that it does focus more on in-kind and financial support, that it is not merely the one or the other. There was a lot of discussion on that at the Consortia Futures Subcommittee meeting, so I just wanted to mention that a little bit more fully, because I think that that's something that, like, I'm a member of CCS, and that is something that it's not, we're not necessarily looking to take money from Rails, but also as a way to leverage the partnerships that are out there and offer support for each other in new ways.
Okay. Dave.
I have a question. When we say support, well, actually 2 questions. In support, what are we talking about?
Financial support or in-kind support?
Money or staff.
Money? Okay, thank you.
And also at this point, we house most of the servers. RSA has theirs in the Springfield Data Center, but Rails pays for that. So we provide support for servers that way. At this point, we are housing all the staff. And then there's also financial support.
Okay, how does this impact, if it does at all, the standalone libraries?
Standalone libraries would not be directly impacted by this. However, the standalone libraries have had opportunities to join LSAPs through our grant program. We've seen shifts in that over the last couple of years when we've been able to do that.
And that will continue?
Yes, we have already expended our grant funds for fiscal 16, and of course, fiscal 17 that'll have to be part of our budget process. But we definitely would want to do
I
that.
personally just signed a couple of checks for that today.
Yes.
And so, for us, like, as CCS is not an officially recognized LSAP, so if we were to change the definition and we were able to become an officially recognized LSAP, it would perhaps give, for instance, there's 2 libraries neighboring mine that are standalone that would then be able to apply for the grants and join CCS, which would in turn make it a stronger consortia with, a larger membership. It would be something that I, personally, for my patrons, would be great because they would have access to those libraries within our shared catalog, as opposed to now we have to search and ILL separately. So.
I think sure. It opens doors, I think, as a way for other consortia. The consortia that I am in is not an officially recognized LSAP, and this opens the door for us to consider whether we want to be that. And actually, like Kate, I have a standalone library that's a neighbor of mine that actually runs the same ILS that we do, but they're standalone. And, down the road, there might be possibilities there that Rails could facilitate something if everything fell into place. So I think the subcommittee and the full committee did a great job making a more inclusive definition. But I would argue the best thing that has come out of this, going from the Rails task force and really from D, making a change to its composition, has really fostered communication among the different consortia. And I think we're going to really start seeing some fruit born from that over the next 2 or 3, really born in the next couple of years.
Made a huge difference.
Yes.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep. And I think, I probably don't need to say this, but it's all about enhancing resource sharing. I mean, anytime we can, add libraries to existing LSAPs or, combine LSAPs, which it looks like, may be happening, it's all good. It's better for the patrons. It's, better, financially. Obviously, libraries make their own choices about what they do. And that they should, because most of the LSAPs are funded by local libraries, and so that's why the decision points have to be at the local level.
Madam Chair, would you entertain a motion to
Absolutely.
approve the new definition?
I think there's a question.
Sorry, Karen. Yes, Karen.
It's hard to jump in here sometimes. I think the most important thing you said, Jane, was that you don't feel that this definition that put it up now would be be contrary to anything that's in the Red Book, the legal definition, in the administrative rules.
In my opinion,
Can you
that's
explain
correct, yes. I'm sorry, you broke up a little bit there.
Can you expand on that? Do you get a legal opinion that this isn't in conflict with the administrative rules? That's my only concern.
We do not have a legal opinion. Mary Jo, I don't have that in front of me. Do you happen to have that?
Yeah.
Okay.
What we found was, wait, let me get to the right one.
I think Carrie.
You got it, Carrie?
No, I'm not sure what section it is.
Okay.
I'm not sure. He's trying to be honest.
Yes, he's right on top of that.
I'm just questioning, I guess, whether we have the legal authority to be the body that defines LSAP.
Pardon me?
Find it last time, didn't you?
Yes, that definition in the administrative rules was actually the definition that was developed and approved by this board.
Yes.
There was no
It was
definition.
adapted from it, yes.
Yeah, there was no definition before the recent revision to the administrative rules that I
Right.
could ever find of an LSAP.
Okay.
Yeah, page 166.
Karen?
Do you have it?
Karen, have it open and ask her.
You want to read it to us, Karen?
It's on page 166. It's most of the way down in the second column. An integrated library system open to membership by full library system members of all types, developed by or receiving financial or in-kind support from a library system.
I don't see what the conflict is.
Yeah, I don't see a conflict. If anything, we're more inclusive in what we're reading. And it's not in conflict. What the book says means an integrated library system open to membership by full library system members of all types, developed by or receiving financial or in-kind support from a library system. What Jane's group has proposed is that local library system automation programs are a shared library management system that are supported by Rails and are open to members of all types and sizes of Rails member libraries. All LSAPs are affiliated with Rails. They are supporting members whose primary service point is within the Rails service area. Although non-Rails service members may belong to an LSAP, they will not be included in allocation of Rails support, operate in a reciprocal contractual partnership with Rails, are supported by Rails through an in-kind or financial support, maintain policies that are broaden resource sharing throughout the Rails service areas, foster cooperation to support Rails mission, and make library systems, management systems affordable for every interested member in a library in Rails, regardless of type or size, and work together to ensure the ability of all LSAPs to meet the needs of their members, to increase the use of shared online catalogs by Rails members, and develop services that will further resource sharing through Rails by providing staff, technical expertise, and assistance when needed.
I think the key point is the developed by or receiving financial or in-kind support.
Yes.
And I don't think that there's anything in the definitions that are contrary. I'm not a lawyer, but...
Well, it seems to me that the definition on page 166, which is a automated system program, and what we've been focusing on today in terms of Rail is eligibility from Rail standpoint as to who can participate in that program, which is really kind of a sub-issue, and I don't see any conflict personally.
And we have enough funds to open the pot to more hands coming into it. It won't increase the costs to the current members in our current LSAPs as we project the scenario down the road.
The 4 current LSAPs have contracts with Rails through fiscal 18 that, subject to availability of funding, of course, does protect them financially. And our next item on the agenda, we'll talk about the criteria and process a little bit for considering potential additional LSAPs.
I mean, the point that you make, Karen, is a very important one, and it is one that as soon as the group did approve the somewhat expanded or at least longer definition, we immediately went to work on ensuring that there would not be new LSAPs springing up willy-nilly asking for state funds. And I think when we get to the criteria, or Rails funds, when we get to the criteria, you'll see what we mean by that. It's really, and I think another thing that's, I just want to make 2 important related points. One is, by being more inclusive, it actually gives us more of a voice, potentially. I don't mean that that we tell anybody what to do, but it just, it kind of changes the relationship and the kind of the nature of the conversation. And the other thing is that in terms of the in-kind or financial, One of the things that Jane and I and Ann have been talking about with the, current LSAPs, particularly RSA and Prairie Cat, is the importance of them being more self-sustaining because of exactly what is potentially happening right
with
now.
Funding.
Yes. Yeah. And, that's one of the other, pieces of what we're doing is that and that isn't going to change now because we have contracts, but it's really important that, and I know Prairie Cat was working on that when the merger happened. It's, it's very important that their work, which is so critical not only to the, statewide network of resource sharing, but to the individual libraries, that they not be at the mercy kind of state funding. So it's all part of a larger, push towards strengthening the whole network.
Well, and I can attest as a SWAN member and a conversation that has been a very pertinent conversation with SWAN since when it was MLS. SWAN's fairly self-supporting, though we do have, some in-kind support with Rails. But even that being said, we keep a portion of the budget just in case we no longer get that we don't touch, and continue to build into our reserves for that purpose.
Right. And it's really important that we work with everybody.
We don't ever want to be in that situation again.
It's one of the rationales for Pinnacle, the way it exists, to be, financially independent. Right. And frankly, if worse comes to worse, that we have the ability to fund services, the critical services we get from system ourselves. That's part of the design concept for our cooperative. But it doesn't mean we're not open to the possibilities for further cooperation, collaboration as the environment evolves.
So yes, we do have plans in motion somewhat, or will be shortly, that if this new definition is approved, that then there is a structured way which new LSAPs can be cooperating with Rails, but not just here's our hand and please feed us, give us money. We are being responsible.
So I think first step is the definition. I know Dave had made a motion. He had to leave, so I'm presuming that means his motion is withdrawn.
Good.
So I will make a motion to approve a revised definition of the LSAP as presented.
I would second that.
And seconded by Paul. All those in favor say aye.
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 All those opposed? All those opposed? Okay, then the motion has been approved. And we will move down to
criteria and process.
Criteria and process for potential LSAPs related to Rails.
And this is for discussion and feedback. We also discussed it at the consortia committee and did make a little bit of a change to the first paragraph based on Paul's suggestion so that it reads, Rail's top priority is improving patron-centric services and resource sharing by encouraging, but not forcing, consortial collaboration and by supporting the growth of existing LSAPs. We will use our LSAP membership grant program to support these activities. So that just adds weight to one of our priorities in terms of growing the existing LSAPs further. As Dee said, we wanted to design criteria that would prevent further fragmentation and encourage additional consolidation where appropriate. We, don't want new consortia popping up and then asking to be LSAPs when it would be better off if they join an existing consortium. Don't want consortia splitting apart and then wanting to become LSAPs or need help merging into a different consortium. So we've laid out those criteria that, first first goal would be to investigate the possibility of consolidations or mergers. Newly formed consortia would not be eligible unless Rails agreed that it was in fact in the best interest of the patrons, given perhaps geographic considerations or other considerations. Definitely want to see that commitment to resource sharing, both within the consortium and outside of it, and also that a consortium needs to be open to growing their membership. Certainly there are times when consortia need to put their growth opportunities on hold. If they're doing a migration or another major project, that would be fine, but in general, we want consortia that would be open to growing. So those are the basic criteria. We would need some time to fold this into our process and our budget planning, so we don't see any contracts actually happening until fiscal 18, and would, in the meantime, come up with an application process that would take all these into account.
Okay, Carrie.
Or just from the technical drafting standpoint, that this is written almost like there's just going to be a window for doing this, rather than somebody coming in 2 years from now and seeking to do it, just based on the dates that are in here. When you talk about July, contract start dates will be July 1, 2017,
good point.
fiscal year 2018. And so I'm just wondering if it is intended to be an ongoing, whether that
It
language
was
should
intended to be ongoing, so you should probably say no
tweaked.
earlier than.
Yeah, July 1 of the year.
Or commencing.
Good point.
Yeah. With the.
Yeah.
So this is just, for discussion.
Yeah.
Do you have any, thank you for that, Carrie.
So if you have any thoughts or if you see anything that's missing, please let Jane know. She would. Sometimes after you read it a third or fourth time, then you come up with things and you go, oh. So please pass those on to Jane.
Well, and I also need to give credit to Ann Slaughter, who worked on this in cooperation with DA.
Perfect.
And this is really procedural in nature, so this is merely for us to offer feedback, to assist, not because we are going to be approving this.
Right.
Because Rails staff will do their ever fabulous job of making everything roll out beautifully.
Absolutely. Okay. So we will move down to board development. We're on 10.
So again,
Public Investment
we're
Act.
just going through the various laws, ordinances, etc., that you have stipulated or certified that you are in compliance with. This is the Public Funds Investment Act and the Public Funds Deposit Act. So there's a short sentence about them, also a link to the Act if you want any more information. And I do, as I said in my report, I do think it would be really, really useful for us to set up a layperson's guide to linked data. I think it's the next thing in resource sharing, and I think that librarians and board members need to understand what it is. So I think that would be a good thing to do, Jane.
Absolutely.
So that'll be a little bit more exciting, possibly board development.
With a link to Denver?
Yeah, maybe something like that.
So, or some
see it in
examples of,
action.
yes, because that would be helpful.
Yep.
I will just say to you, I've enjoyed the topics we covered so far. I think they're useful refreshers.
I think they are too. I think it was.
It's always good to
It's
just.
important to just think about what it is that you're saying you're compliance with. Yep.
Yes.
That's all I have to say about that.
Okay. Any other comments, questions?
Oh, I have a question for the state. Are we almost done?
Almost.
I have a question for the state library.
Okay. Well, the next thing up, we have Rails board member reports. Kate?
I just wanted to, I was my library is doing a salary and compensation study with the Management Association of Illinois, and speaking with one of the staff members from MAI yesterday, we were looking at the Laconia data, and just so that other members of the board are aware, not only for Rails as a whole, but also for member libraries, the new Laconia data is incredibly disturbing and sad and non-useful. You're no longer able...
Flawed, I would say.
Flawed. Flawed is a very good word. You can't search by library. The data that's inputted wasn't inputted in a logical fashion, so you'll see salaries listed as like $80 for the year for a $4 million library with operating budgets of $4 million. So I personally am very saddened by this, especially because this was something we, as the Rails board, were supposed to have gotten when we were doing our transition with innovation experts, and to see a survey that has been so incredibly valuable and useful to us, to see that this has happened to it is deeply disturbing to me, and especially in light of everything happening in the state, it's more important than ever to have relevant and accurate information in terms of salaries and operating budgets and how that is structured. So I hope that, and I'd already mentioned this to Dee, but I hope that that is something that we can look at Rails, because that to me is critical if we're going to be able to continue to evaluate how we do things, not only at a system level, but also for individual libraries. So that's all.
On a personal note, I guess, well, two things I'll say. On a fiduciary note, since that's been a topic today, my library actually just completed an RFP process for multifunction devices and services, which is our fancy way of talking about copiers and printers. But we saw...
They also scan.
Yes, they scan. Thanks to an RFP process that went well, we're actually going to see a reduction in 40% of our costs, so we're really, really pleased with that. My RFP is available for anyone, because I actually asked on the director's list and no one had one, so I wrote one, and I'm happy to share. It worked well.
Resource sharing.
Yes, it is resource sharing of knowledge. And on a personal note, I was asked, and I've accepted, to be an assistant governor for my Rotary district. So I'm I was really tickled pink. I accused the wrong person of nominating me, and so I had to retract the accusation, and I accused someone else.
Is it the truth?
It was the truth.
Is it fair to all concerned?
Well, I guess hopefully it's fair to me. But I
What? Sorry?
I think you might have done the third prong of the...
Yes.
Maybe there was somebody else that nominated you.
Yes.
Well, congratulations.
Oh, thank you.
Congratulations.
I'll tell you the gov now.
Dave left to attend his library's annual reward dinner tonight.
Oh, nice.
So for staff, so that was a very important reason, and so that's good to hear that that's going on, and those are always welcome for all staff members, that they get rewarded for good work. All right. Anything else?
Kathy has a question.
Kathy has a question for the State Library, I know.
And I'm probably a little preemptive, but I'm trying to get my calendar in order. Do you have a tentative date for the All Systems Board meeting? I know it's just January, but usually it's, April or May, so.
Well, at this point, we wouldn't have one, Kathy, because we have absolutely no travel, no meals, no anything. Oh. So we would have nothing like that.
Okay.
Okay. Good question.
I'm trying to get my calendar organized. Thank you.
All right. Agenda building for the next Rails Board meeting. If you have anything, please let Dee or I know. Or
Thinking that
Jane?
we maybe talk about the plan of service.
And the budget.
Plan of service and budget for next time?
I don't know. Just an idea.
Okay. Plan of service revision, perhaps?
Yes. Absolutely.
All right.
I think I know what we'll be talking about.
Okay.
So too.
We are moving down to number 13 at 3:38 p.m. So I will ask for a motion to adjourn the meeting.
I'll make that motion.
All right. It has been made by Kathy and seconded by Lisa. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you all. Please drive carefully, and be glad we're not on the East Coast.
Oh my God.
Okay, I'm like, wait.
Don't drive out there.